Welcome to Partnering with Youth for Sustainability, Researching the Shift in Student Attitudes. My name is Heidi Gibson. I am from the Smithsonian Science Education Center, and I'm joined by Dr. Helen Bond. I'll let her introduce herself.
Yes, welcome all. Helen Bond. I'm a professor at Howard University in the School of Education and happy to be on this project. Thank you.
And Janae, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Janae Briscoe. I am an 8th grade science teacher who implemented this project at Howard University Middle School, Math and Science. And I'm so happy to be here.
And Leon.
Hi, I'm Leon Drabo. I'm the STEM teacher at Howard University Middle School for Mathematics and Science, and I'm glad to be here with everyone. Thank you.
So as you've heard, we're thrilled to have you with us today for this session. We're going to be talking about a year-long collaboration that the four of us have been working on, which is using a product produced by the Smithsonian Science Education Center called the Smithsonian Science for Global Goals Environmental Justice Guide. Ms. Briscoe, Mr. Drabo used this guide with their students in their classroom, and Dr. Bond did some research on the changes students saw as response to the guide. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about what that guide is to sort of introduce you to what that experience would have been for students. Then we're going to have a fantastic opportunity to learn to hear firsthand from the two teachers about the student work and their reflections on implementing this guide. We're going to hear from Dr. Bond on how those research findings, what those were and how those might connect to your own practice. And we're hoping that through this entire session, you become more comfortable and confident with the idea of transdisciplinary materials focused on sustainability. So that's using all sorts of disciplines from science to social science to really focus on problems of sustainability. So let's get started and we can go to the next slide. As we said, Ms. Briscoe and Mr. Drabo were implementing the Environmental Justice Guide. And this guide asks students to really explore the question of how can we create environments that are healthy for everyone? Next slide. And this guide is part of a larger series of guides produced by the Smithsonian Science Education Center. There are 8 in total, 3 more on the way. And they include titles such as biodiversity or food or sustainable communities. Next slide. These topics are all drawn from the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now, you might be familiar with those goals. They were drawn up after consultation with United Nations member states, civil society, and people around the world. And they run from 2015 to 2030. I like to call them the World Strategic Plan because it's really about what is the future that we're hoping for as a world. And because it's all about the future and what we need to do to accomplish the future that we want, they make a really amazing framing to help young people think about the future that they want. So we have this big global vision, next slide, but what these guides do is really take those big global goals and shrink them down to localize them. So they start by really helping students think about what is their local knowledge already? What do they know about these topics already in their space? Investigations, going out and finding out more information to try and make decisions that are local to them, and then hopefully take action to make things just a little bit better in the problems that they identify. And then we say that those actions, they can start to see how those actions connect globally to become sort of part of a system of action taking around the world. Next slide. Next slide. So we use in the guide, slide before, sorry, can you go back one? A discover, understand, and act progression. So it starts with discover to really help young people think about the assets that they come to the learning experience with. What do they already know? What's their community context? How do they have a personal connection with the issues? then understand where students really start to gather data to help inform their decisions. And that data can be about science, to help understand the science of an issue, but we equally think that these issues are so complex and socio-scientific that they need social science as well. So that brings in that transdisciplinary approach. And then finally, act. To take that ideas and that knowledge that they've gathered and then do something with it, apply it for social good, put their learning into action, and to really reflect on what they've learned. And so they do this throughout the guide over and over again. Next slide. And just a brief little bit about these guides. They're free, they're available for a download, so you can find them at the Smithsonian Science Education website. They're designed for ages 11 to 18, and they are available translated into multiple languages. They're optimized for screen readers. As you can see at the bottom here, each guide has a sort of planner to help educators who are using it. And we also have a modular approach. So many of the guides have sort of pieces that can be put together. There is a wraparound set of resources called a story map that are multimedia. So additional extensions that are videos or podcasts or things like that. And we also do a great deal of professional development on these guides if you are interested. Next slide. So a few key guide features. We take an action research approach, meaning that students are really researching the problem in their own community with the intent of taking action. Really thinking about different disciplines and different perspectives as they try to find sustainable actions. We really try to center student identities, knowledge, and their local community. Throughout the guides, we have a representation of diverse professional mentors, meaning within the guides, you see sort of quotes and ideas and identities from people all around the world, different stages of their careers, different places, different ethnicities, genders, etc. And then we really focus on integrating inclusion into the activities and the action. Next slide. So very briefly, before we move on to the research and the student work, the students have been focusing on environmental justice. And one of the first things they have to do is ask themselves, what is environmental justice? So I wanted to start off our framing of this by asking you the same thing. One of the things students do is think about, what is the environment? And they think beyond just the natural environment. What is the environment around me? What's, the air I'm breathing? What's the built environment? What's the water I'm drinking? How is this all related to me? And then they think about justice. What is just? What is equitable? What is fair? And then they kind of use a Venn diagram approach to think about, what do those two concepts mean when they're overlapped? What would it mean to have an environment that is fair for everyone? So next slide. And you'll see some of those environmental justice reflections in the student work, I'm pleased to say. But in the meantime, you can be thinking about that yourself. So within the guide, students start thinking about their relationship with their environment. They think, as we just said, what is environmental justice? How does that environment affect health and well-being of people? What are the environmental problems in my community? What is it experiencing? What's causing those problems? And then thinking about whether those impacts are unjust. Are they affecting some people more than others? And then they think about what can be done. And part of that thinking about what can be done is grounded in what is already being done. The environmental justice movement is decades old. And so trying to help students see that they're joining a movement, not starting a movement, is important. And they end with the action piece. How will we act? Next slide. So this project was studying the impact on Black, Indigenous, people of color, girls' agency, STEM engagement, and interest in STEM careers. And we were thrilled that we received support to do this project from the Smithsonian American Women's History Initiative. And we're very pleased to do that. And they strive to be the women's the country's most comprehensive undertaking to document, research, collect, and display the rich, complete, and compelling story of women in our nation. Next slide. And so as part of this project, we brought into the classroom 3 research mentors who participated in the guides to talk to the students in the classroom. So we brought in Dr. Onyemechi Nweke from the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States, Andrea Kim Neighbors, who is from the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center, and Gabby Lee, who is from the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian. And now you're going to hear a little bit more about what this looked like through the research and through the classroom. So next slide, and I will pass this over to Dr. Helen Bond.
Thank you so much, Heidi. This part of the presentation asked the question, well, what did we do in order to measure students' changes or shifts in attitude in response to this curriculum? Next slide, please. So what were our research questions? We were principally 2 sets of research questions. One was how and in what way. So how did the Global Goals environmental curriculum, how did the students acquire and understand knowledge of environmental justice and issues, specifically in their own communities? Second question, what motivates them to take action to address things in their local communities? We also wanted to know, how did the curriculum engage them or inform them to act and to responsibly, understanding that choices that they make in their part of the world can affect people everywhere. So those were 3 sort of how questions. Next slide. We had a set of questions that we were asking: in what way did the female BIPOC research mentors help middle school students recognize that diverse individuals and groups, how did they engage in the past and present on environmental issues, both locally, nationally, and internationally? We wanted them, and we wanted to find out in what way that they might engage in similar actions that also supported gender equality and respect for diversity. And of course, one thing that we wanted to know and that we did measure was, did this particular curriculum increase their interest in STEM-related careers? Next slide, please. Research design, very quickly. It was a mixed methods participatory research study, collaboration between Howard University in Washington, D.C., Howard Middle School of Mathematics, and the Smithsonian Science Education Center. We had 2 classrooms that we worked with, identified as Class 1, Class 2. We implemented a pre-test. We gave surveys out to students before they started being exposed to the curriculum. About midway through, we did focus groups in each classroom, Class 1, Class 2. And from that, we did 2 semi-structured interviews with students to get a sense of how they were sort of perceiving and taking in and understanding the curriculum. And then after the interviews, we did post-test in Class 1 and Class 2 to sort of compare what gains, shifts, changes in their attitudes from the pre-test. The interviews and focus groups were giving us sort of a qualitative sense of their understanding, what motivated them, what's informing action, what's important to them about this particular topic or set of issues and questions. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to hand it over to my 2 esteemed colleagues, our teachers for today, Janae Briscoe and Leon Drabo. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bond. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Janae Briscoe, and I am so excited to be here with you guys. My students at Howard University Middle School Math and Science, we're so excited to be a part of the first rollout of the Environmental Justice Project. They were so excited to be included in this, and they really took heed to all of the tasks that we had through the project. They loved the concept of the project, and I just enjoyed hearing their open dialogue and their enthusiasm about the project. My hope for them is that coming out of this project, that we have inspired the next scientists, innovators, or even advocates. So I'm so excited for you guys to see their artifacts today, and I hope you guys enjoy. You can go on to the next slide. All right, so first starting out, when we first started on the project, after we took our pre-surveys, the students had to take a survey on where they saw themselves included with natural environment. So as you can see, we have different figures here. They range from 1 to 7, and the students were told to figure out where they stood with the natural environment. If you're 1, being as though you don't really see yourself intertwined with the natural environment, to being a 4, where you see yourself kind of 50-50. So many students had different types of aspects of how they felt. So here are a few. So the first figure 1, we have a 4. The second figure, we have a 5, and then we even have one that is at a 2. Some students didn't really see themselves intertwined with nature, and some did. So there was a very open dialogue in our class, and they were very honest about it. So next slide. So after we went through and we figured out how we were intertwined with natural environment, we then had to dissect the word justice. What does justice mean to us? To first understand environmental justice, we need to understand what justice meant. So for this particular task, I had my students work in pairs, and they each had to come up with 3 words that they thought described justice. So in all, we have 6 words. Just a little background about my students. I have mostly African-American students, and they were just very enthusiastic about this. It's really important right now for justice with us in the world right now. So they were very excited to speak about this. So for this particular poster, we have Black community, respect, equality, freedom, rights, and perseverance. After they figured out what words they wanted to stem off of justice, they then had to describe why they chose those specific words. So for example, respect. I wrote justice because in order to have justice, you need to have or earn respect. Equality. Equality is a part of justice. To be able to have justice, we have to be able to have the same rights. Rights. Fighting for your rights is a part of justice. So after we figured out what justice meant to us, we then had to make our own definition of environmental justice. So from these 6 words that you see here, the students had to choose 3 to come up with to include for their definition of environmental justice. So for this particular one, my students chose equality, respect, and rights. And they came up with the definition of environmental justice is equality because not everybody or everything earns respect or has the same rights or is treated the same. I was so proud of them for coming up with this poster. As you can see, it's very beautiful, and they put their hard work into it. And I love the definition that they came up with. Next slide, please. Here's another poster. For this one, my students kind of wanted to really write some more words. So this one has 8 words instead of 6. But I was encouraging it. So for these particular words, we have people, community, righteousness, wholesome, peace, fairness, law, protest. So for example, fairness gives a fair chance to the defendant. Wholesome, coming together to fight against police brutality. Community, sometimes it takes a village to get justice you deserve. For this particular one, my students decided to use the 3 words, people, community, and fairness. And they came up with the definition of environmental justice is when people come together as a community and help out in all fairness. Next slide, please. Here are a little bit more of the environmental justice definitions that they came up with that stemmed off the posters that you just saw. So for our first one, we have environmental justice is equality and fairness within the community. Environmental justice is the allowance of community to be at peace and to have equality in order to give freedom. And our last one, environmental justice is the power to stop harming the animals and plants and save the animals that are getting abused and poached. And they need freedom for the environment to live healthier and safer. I must say that my students really took heed to poaching. This project really aligned with everything we were already learning inside of the classroom, and they had no idea about poaching, and they just took it and ran with it. And it was lots of debates about poaching in my classroom. Next slide, please. After we came up with our definitions for environmental justice, we then had to look at a few scenarios and figure out what we thought as unjust or just. So what you see here are 5 scenarios listed A through E, and then you have an arrow that's unjust or just. So this was an independent assignment, but we did go through the scenarios as a class. So each student could have their own opinion about how they felt, and no one can cloud their judgment. So they were very honest about this. We had open dialogue on this task, and I was so proud of them. I'm going to read you guys 3 scenarios. So scenario A says one country sends many old or broken computers, phones, and other electronics to another country. Although the other country is paid to take the waste, it exposes their people to toxic materials. So you can see in the first example, you see my student has A as very unjust, whereas another student has A as being kind of in the middle. We had a debate about this. They thought, well, we're getting the technology. We need technology. We need it to live. We need it for daily living. But the other student thought that it was wrong because it's promoting toxic waste. So even though it's positive, it's still giving all the negative effect. So everyone had their own opinions about that. And this is what I enjoyed about this task. For scenario B, we have plastic pollution breaks into smaller and smaller pieces in the ocean. This is called microplastic. Each year, more plastic pollution means more microplastics in the environment that hurt people and other living things. Everyone kind of was on the same page with that because they understand that if our ocean gets polluted, it's a big issue for us. And it was a topic a lot in our class because they all love seafood. So that was a big topic in our class. For scenario E, we have employers require farm workers to work outside as a wildfire approaches, exposing them to thick smoke. This was also a big debate. They thought that since the farm workers were making money and getting paid to work in those conditions, that it compensated for them being exposed to that thick smoke. So you have some students that thought it was very just, and then you have some students that thought it was unjust, and then some were just in the middle. So it was definitely a debate going on in the class on this particular task. Next slide. After we identified what was just and unjust, we then went ahead and dissected what a healthy environment looks like and what an unhealthy environment looks like. So these are 4 examples from my students that came up with their own healthy environments and their own unhealthy environments based on what they see every day in Washington, D.C. So healthy environment, top left, you have places that don't look abandoned, a community with healthy plants and trees, and clean water promotes a healthy environment. For the unhealthy environment, they have factories releasing gases, trash pollution in the environment, and contaminated water. Going over to the top right, healthy environment means clean water, intact buildings, a lot of plants, little to no pollution rate, and little to no murder rate. Unhealthy environment, you have air pollution, toxic waste dumping, high murder rate, high homeless rate, and buildings falling apart. In the bottom left, you have a healthy environment, which is clean air, clean water sources, healthy trees. In an unhealthy environment, you have trash pollution, unhealthy habitats, and air pollution. In the bottom right, we have for a healthy environment, an environment with fresh air, an environment with plants, environment with clean water. And for unhealthy, we have air pollution, dirty water, trash pollution, and no trees. So you may see air pollution a lot in these tasks that I will be showing because we talked about it a lot in class. Basically, when we were talking about global warming and climate change, the students actually really took heed to air pollution and they took heed to trash pollution. They understand that if those things keep happening, that it's definitely going to affect the way we live and affect our environments. If you have questions about the parentheses that you see next to the bullets, part of the task was to match up these healthy environments with the sustainable goals. So the sustainable development goals, there are 17 of them, and the students had to identify which goal that it intertwined with. So for example, if you see a 3, we have clean air. That means good health and well-being. If you see a 6, we have a lot of plants. That means clean water, sanitation. And if you see a 13, which is healthy trees and clean air, that is for climate action. So the students really took their time and they dissected which goals these healthy environments would actually fit into. And I was so proud of them for doing so. Next slide, please. After we looked at what an unhealthy environment and a healthy environment looks like, we then had to answer this question. How could this type of environment make people healthier and happier? For example, would having access to a healthy environment allow people to exercise more or make them less anxious? Write those ideas under your list. So after we dissected what an unhealthy environment looks like, I had the students then talk about how that affects our health. That was part of the task in the project, and they really enjoyed this part also, and they just took it and ran with it. So for unhealthy conditions will cause rats, and rats may transmit diseases. There are a lot of rats around in Washington, D.C., so they see them a lot, so they wanted to address that part of it. Headaches because of air pollutions, dirty environments may cause depression. And for a healthy environment, they said that having a healthy environment will help people be less anxious. It will also help people have less allergic reactions. Healthy environments will help people be more happy in life. And I'm sorry, that's the top left that I'm reading from. For the top right, we have unhealthy conditions. The way trash pollution can make people unhealthier is that it can pollute the water we drink, along with the fish that swim in it, making us sick. Unhealthy habitats can make animals more easy to hunt. With an increase of the animals being affected dying, they will be closer to being in danger or extinct. That will also put our food at stake. For a healthy environment, the way that clean air can make us healthier and happier is that it can encourage us to go outside more. People might go back inside after smelling pollution or cigarette smoke. How clear water sources can help us be healthier and happier is that we need water to survive, and it keeps us healthy. Healthy trees can make us healthier and happier is that it gives us oxygen for us. For our bottom right, we have unhealthy conditions. Air pollution could cause short-term health conditions like headaches, but some can last a long time like loss of vision. Deforestation could result in the long term of less oxygen. Natural disasters can cause destruction of homes and buildings, but can also cause injuries that could be short or long term. For a healthy environment, we have sunlight gives out vitamin D, which includes calcium, helping us and plants grow and be healthy. Clean water can help with sea life without plastic or trash on shore. And no cars or electric cars can be great since there is no pollution that could make it harder to breathe. Next slide, please. After we talked about environmental justice, we went through what we thought was just and unjust. This is kind of at the end of our road with the project. We then went ahead and tried to advocate a little bit more. The students had a great presentation from Andrea Kim Neighbors that gave a wonderful presentation on Kathy Kirchner from Marshall Islands, and the students just enjoyed it, and they were advocates after that. So here are some of the posters. The students were creative with their own posters. I let them do their own thing, and they came up with these. Keep our earth green and clean, as you see on the left. They have half of the world on fire, no trees, no leaves. The other, on the right, we have a healthy earth, sun, trees, and grass, and then we have the recycle sign in the middle. On our right, we have clean the earth, and the students have 4 subtopics that they put into the squares, and they told they were telling us how to keep the earth clean. And we can go to the next slide. For this one, we have on the top left, on the left, sorry, we have Save Earth Life, We Love Earth. They have things like pick up trash, save energy, recycle, and plant a tree. To the right, we have Be Part of the Change, save energy, recycle, pick up trash, and plant a tree. I'll let you guys look for a second. Next slide. Thank you. On the left, we have Go Green, by doing things such as recycling, reuse bags, saving energy, and donating. On our right, we have Reduce, Reuse, and Recycle, keep the earth clean and green, ways to protect the earth, save energy, plant more trees, ride bikes, or even save water. Next slide. After we did our poems, we went a little further in our advocacy, and the students wrote some poems, and these are amongst the last things that they did for the project. So I'm so excited for you guys to hear this, and my students worked very hard on these projects. I believe this is the second slide. There's one before this one. Thank you. So first, we're going to start with the environment, and my students did record voice memos.
The environment. Smoke in the air, nowhere left to breathe. A lot of police around, nowhere to leave. A lot of people wandering, nowhere to stay. No playgrounds in the area, nowhere to play. Trash all over the ground, everyone littering, no help found. Gas polluting the air, no fresh air around, not a healthy environment, nowhere to surround. Run down houses, nowhere near clean, a lot of unhealthy places people have seen, a toxic neighborhood full of people with no care, kids getting shot and people not aware.
And that is what was from one of my female students who lives in DC, and she just described what she sees on a day-to-day basis. And I was so proud of her for putting that and reciting that into a poem. The next one we have is Unaware of the Conditions.
Unaware of the conditions. While you are unaware of the conditions, we still have a mission. While our environment is disappearing like we are magicians. Community population going up like addition. While I make these rhymes, you commit them crimes, poisoning Mother Nature that will last for a lifetime, but you will continue to pursue the damage sometimes. Unaware of the conditions that you cause, it seems the world is going on pause, but the world doesn't care about the flaws.
And that is also a female student, and this one is one of my favorites because how she was able to just rhyme with everything and get her point across. Next slide, please. On the left, we have Our World.
Our world. Pick up the trash. They're trying to make this planet last. Plant more trees. It should be a breeze. All these words to help our planet, and still our world is dying. People say that they are trying, but in reality they are lying. They see the trash on the street. It's all the way up to their feet. Sooner or later we won't have a home and we'll be alone. Clean up the world for your safety, and maybe our world won't be so shaky.
Another great one that I was very proud of my student for doing. And our last one is going to be The Lesson, and this is done by one of my male students.
Lesson, nature and man combined, a complex net we've designed, our damaging habits to find, as we leave nature behind. Guns in our hand, we shoot and kill, poaching and deforestation, a hole to fill, infecting water from oil we drill, making people very ill. Continuing a cruel progression, fuel usage is a strong obsession. Our carbon footprint left a negative impression. But here's a question, have we truly learned our lesson?
And that was amongst one of my favorites. My students did so good with the poems. I was so proud of them. I had many to choose from, but I just went with these four. And they just enjoyed being a part of this project. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing my student artifacts, and I'm going to pass it on to Leon Drabo. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Janae. Okay, as you can see in our first few slides, our kids were able to grow from a place where in which they expressed thoughts that initially were fixed to a place that was quite abstract regarding matters such as justice versus injustice, technological waste, and how can have a lasting impact on life in a particular niche to the broader environment. Next slide. This is more of the same activity shown beforehand, where in which students were able to evaluate and differentiate between what's just and unjust. Next slide. So there were also really helpful questions that were scaffolded, that I felt were really well scaffolded and differentiated, which helped students to really dig deep and develop a train of thought, which was relatively ahead of their grade level, being that they were initially sixth graders. A lot of them were able to answer questions and think about questions on an eighth and maybe even ninth grade level pertaining to the environment and environmental justice. Next slide. Additionally, with activities such as the inclusion of nature to self, our kids came to understand that they too are a part of nature, and that the beauty of it all is that they're young, and that how they will feel will lead the way to a healthier environment for all, Blue Jays included too. Next slide. So, in comparing healthy to unhealthy environments, our students were able to really develop a sense of cause and effect in ways that are really tangible and advanced, such as radon exposure and the simple consequences to overplaying video games all night till your device overheats. Next slide. Yep. And that's more of the same activity. This is actually one of the activities that I think the students really enjoyed, comparing a contrast to unhealthy environment to unhealthy environments, and also open the door for them to learn a lot about health conditions that they had no clue about beforehand. Next slide. Thank you. And this student really, really enjoyed it. Next slide. Ultimately, our environmental justice curriculum was excelled at taking matters that are growing more complex each and every day and scaffolded and differentiated them in ways that our sixth graders were able to understand. Thank you. Now on back on to Dr. Bond.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed those wonderful artifacts. You got a sample. You were able to look inside on some of the wonderful classroom projects that the students actually were being presented. So what did we find? Let's go to the next slide. Remember our questions? We were really looking to understand the impact of this curriculum, as well as the role models and the teachers and all the assignments on students. Just a couple of quotes to give you a sense. This was part of one of their wonderful poems, This World Deserves, I'll just read the last line, to be treated in a special way. We'll go to the next one. You get a sense that they're understanding a larger picture here. You saw part of that in a poem, but the last line I thought was really impactful. If everyone came together in a way, then everything could get better someday. They really had this sense of cooperation, of coming together, of working together. Next slide, please. Remember, one of our research questions, we were wondering, after being exposed to this curriculum, the role models, the assignments, would this increase their interest in STEM, in science? STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. You see the pre-test. We do see some movement. Look at the post-test. We have strongly agree. 20% strongly agree here, 35%. So you do see there's more work to be done here, certainly. But after exposure to the curriculum, students are having an increased interest and see a possibility for themselves in science. Thank you. Next slide. Remember, we also measured the need for role models, the 3 role models. Ms. Briscoe talked about how impactful the role models were on her class. But as a pretest, we were asking, do you have a role model in science career? I think this is one of our key findings. You can see as a pretest, we had quite a bit saying neither agree or disagree. We had some strongly disagree, but afterwards, just exposure to the curriculum and the role models, we do see some positive movement. We see 28% strongly agreeing. Before we had 3%. But there is still work to be done, and that's part of this project is where do we go from here? We still have some saying neither agree nor disagree. So role models in STEM is an important part of this project. Thank you. If you'll move to the next slide. Big part and an interesting part of our findings, measuring what we call environmental concern. Our question here was, what motivates students to act or engage in what we call pro-environmental behavior? A focus also was on sustainability mindset. So what is motivating students to adopt these mindsets, to engage in behavior that supports and not hurts the environment? So one question we asked was, am I concerned about environmental problems because of the consequences for my community? Prior to exposure to the curriculum, the role models, the assignments, the teachers, you had, in terms, they got rated from 1 star to 7 stars. You had a 14% before being concerned about the consequences for their community. And after exposure, you see quite a bit of movement. You have 43% giving 7 stars. That, one thing that motivates me is concerns for the consequences of what can happen to my community. So you do see a lot of positive movement in that direction. Next slide, please. Again, measuring environmental concern. The question is what motivates students to act or to engage in pro-environmental behavior. And this question was focusing on the planet. We asked them, are you concerned about environmental problems because of what you think could happen to the planet? And before, in terms of, we have a scale again of 7 stars to 1 star, 7 stars meaning, I'm very, very concerned. because of the consequences for the planet. And pre-test, we had 77%. So students came in with a sense that, there is something to be concerned about for the planet. And post-test, we had an increase of 10% of 87%. Next slide, please. Measuring this idea of environmental connectedness. How connected do you feel with the environment? You notice Mr. Drabo and Ms. Briscoe mentioning the INS scale, the inclusion of nature and self. This also tapped into that. The question here is, what motivates students again to act responsibly, informed? So we gave them the scenario of building new roads is so important that trees should be cut down. So now you're leveraging or you're juxtaposing the building of new roads, which we think of as progress. And again, trees, we know it's important for carbon emissions and lowering the greenhouse gas effect. So pre-test, somewhat agree, 45%, undecided, 22%, strongly disagree, 48% post-test. So you did see that students were able to differentiate when progress actually hurts sustainability and thinking about progress and needing infrastructure in new ways. Again, that's measuring this notion of how connected you feel to the environment and what motivates you to move, to act, to speak out. Thank you. Next slide. Interesting slides here, interesting part of our research study, the notion of measuring environmental perceptions. What perceptions do students have regarding the environment? The question was, if things don't change, we will have a big disaster in the environment soon. So pre-test, you see that there's very low of what we call environmental denialism. Students came into the project having a sense that, something's wrong. If we don't do something, something's bad going to happen. When they left the project, they were more informed about what's going to happen, why it's going to happen, understanding it's human induced. We went from strongly agree to 78% to strongly agree, 84%. Next slide. Really an important piece that we were tapping in here. We call this I can imagine, this notion of being able to imagine a more just and sustainable future. And researchers suggest that if you're able to imagine a sustainable and just world, perhaps you can be motivated to act to create such a world. The question was, I have a clear understanding of all the ways that a sustainable human existence would differ from our current state of affairs. A lot of students undecided at the pre-test before. What happens after? We have much less undecided, 14%. And so there's work to do there, but this notion of being able to imagine a futuristic, better state of things is an important part of the study. Next slide, please. Again, I can imagine. The scenario was, can you imagine a system in which the government reflects the interest of the natural environment versus the wealthy? We do see quite a few not, moderately disagreeing with that, meaning I really can't imagine that. You see much less, meaning more students are being able to imagine a world in which the government really has the environment in mind. Next slide, please. Conclusions. I want to give a little bit of time here to, and then hopefully it will leave you time for questions. Our conclusions, our first conclusion, which was, I think, one of our most important ones, of course, they're all important. Students did increase their knowledge and understanding of environmental issues. You saw that in the slides. You saw that in the artifacts, especially as they related to their own community. An important finding, though, was that they best communicated this knowledge in their own culturally specific ways, in the poetry, in describing their own worlds. And so we thought that was significant. Number two, students did express that they had a lack of role models. We interpret that as a need for role models, not only just for pursuing a career interest in science, but for really helping them to act. We call that prompting or promoting action. We saw the interest, as Ms. Briscoe said, after the poem was read by Andrea Neighbors, introducing us to one of the environmental role models, and students were inspired to write poetry. 3, Imagining a more just and sustainable world really involves students in framing that world and what they saw as injustices in their own community, in their poems, in the interviews, in the focus groups. Students talked about, environmental injustice in terms of economic and civil injustices, not being able to pay rent, police violence, not having enough green space for children to play. So understanding that and framing that, and each of those can be aligned with the global goals. 4, students did recognize the urgency. You saw it on the slide, that low environmental denialism coming into the project, recognizing, hey, if we don't do something different, this is going to affect our future, our communities, our world, our children. But sometimes they weren't always clear on what course of action to take. They're just middle school students, but they did have a sense that their voices combined with other voices, such as on social media and through creative arts, could make a difference. So they were really, really focused, around cooperation and working together. And if people work together, this is something that we can actually turn around. And 5, by drawing, and I think this is for our educators out there and our many practitioners as well as researchers, we feel that by drawing on the assets and talents of students, engaging them in this curriculum, letting them express in ways that are specific to their age group, to their, to their culture, then their interest in STEM, as well as their desire and their motivation to act is even greater. And so that's certainly a recommendation there for our educators out there. And so thank you, and we hope that you have questions. If I look at, looks like we have at least 3 minutes. So happy to take all questions, and thank you very much.
Yes, please feel free to put any questions you have in the chat. As Dr. Bond said, we have 3 minutes remaining, but we'd love to answer your questions during that time. And as we're waiting to see if we have any questions, I'd like to ask Janae and Leon, how did you handle, discussing some of these controversial issues in your classroom?
When it came to discussing controversial issues in the classroom, I kept it honest, but I also try to keep things as visual as possible. And also, I also try to use as few words as possible, and more moments for being the kids love to record TikTok videos and stuff. Went ahead and gave them a chance to act out some of the visuals that I provided them with. And from there, we went into a short conversation about what's just or what's unjust, and examples such as things that we saw take place in summer of 2020 and other environmental situations that have taken place over the past 10, 15 years per se. And the kids were able to grasp it and connect it to what we were learning.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Janae, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes. So basically, honestly, I just established ground rules. I try to create a safe environment for everyone. Everyone's neutral. I try to be neutral in the conversation, and I try to encourage respectful dialogue. Everyone's opinions matter. I love the critical thinking. However, we must all be respectful and just have a good dialogue.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And I see that we have some questions coming in. We don't have very much time, but I will ask this one question to Dr. Bond, Helen. The I imagine questions seem to get at this level of optimism for the future, but was that tested in other ways as well? Some of those activities could actually decrease optimism.
Okay, the question was that tested in other ways as well?
Was it tested in other ways, and did you see anything that would, you think, decrease optimism?
Yes, I think several of the assignments that you saw here presented by Ms. Briscoe and Mr. Drabo, such as the posters, gave a sense of imagining what a more just and sustainable world might look like. I think the poetry, the songs, and certainly got at that as well.
Fantastic. Now, I know that we are at time, so I assume that we're about to get cut off here. But it looks like there is a question on how you make it clear to students that the environment is not politics. And I think that that's something that we've all faced. It goes to this, question of what is controversial and how do we deal with controversy. And I think, what our teachers have said here is so useful in terms of keeping it honest, keeping it straightforward, sticking to the facts, and letting students explore it themselves instead of coming in with a political agenda. So thank you for that. And we have, I think one final question, which is, it's for me, what would you want me to add to my work as a science communicator to support your work? So I think that basically we're all science communicators, right? That's what we do with students. And I'm hoping that what we're doing, all of us, as we work with students, as we work with curriculum, as we work with research, is helping young people think about how they can communicate about science and communicate about the future that they want and try to make that future a reality. So thank you all for joining us today. I'll let everybody else on the call say goodbye.
Bye, everyone.